Good evening. Health authorities have...
These vehicles may or may not have mechanical...
It will be a trial within a trial.
Louise Neimer at the Ontario...
The city does have a bylaw that requires...
On City TV, Channel 79, Cable 7, this is CityPulse Tonight with Deanie Petty.
Good evening. Our top stories tonight: a tragic fire in the apartment tower above the Plaza 2 hotel. One man is dead, scores are homeless. We have a series of reports. Homicide officers are investigating Metro's 29th murder of the year, a beating death on Toronto's Skid Row. And the Argonauts in first place and fighting like hell to stay there. First, the fire. A 3-alarm blaze in the apartment tower above the Plaza 2 hotel in downtown Toronto claimed the life of one man and sent 24 others to hospital. Tonight, many more are homeless as fire investigators scour the guttered apartment for a cause. We have a series of reports. First, Mark Daly.
Even an intense apartment blaze like this one that Pumper 10 discovered just before 11 this morning is quick work for Toronto firefighters when everything works. Nothing much work today. The entire Plaza 2 and Bay Store complexes were plunged into darkness when both the main and the auxiliary power systems were fried by the flames in apartment 1809.
Hydro made a tremendous difference to the logistics of the fire. The fact is that to get the equipment to that floor and personnel to fight the fire, they had to walk all the way up to the 18th floor and then begin their work. Masks that people wear last for approximately 15 to 20 minutes under these work conditions. The cylinders had to be replaced. To replace the cylinders again, each cylinder had to be walked up from ground level.
So if the hydro had been working, that person might have been saved.
No, I wouldn't say.
When they got there, the water wasn't quick in coming, and some of the emergency hallway hoses burst under the pressure. Family and friends were separated as some people managed to beat the worst of the heat and smoke. Many others were left hanging out of windows, smoke billowing from apartments from the 18th floor up. 66-year-old Basil Campbell, home alone in his 22nd floor suite, tried to get down the stairs, but collapsed just above the fire floor as the smoke and heat shot upwards. Others like Valerie Johnston stayed in their apartments. Belle's boyfriend Ross Jarvis talked to her on the phone during the entire ordeal. She was only steps from the dying Mr. Campbell, but never knew it.
I thought I was going out the exit door, but I was at apartment 1911, which is just a thank God. And the man there pulled me in, and he said, "Don't." I said, "We've got to go down the stairwell. They've told me. This is security." And he said, "No." He said, "I've just gotten off the phone with the fire department, and they've told us to stay here." So we stayed there, and we're all right.
There were many happy reunions as well. 100 firefighters from all over Toronto were there, many of them just ferrying fresh air tanks for their brothers and the people being rescued upstairs. Many firemen fell, having given up their air to citizens. All were treated for smoke and some injuries, and all sent home. But Captain Jack Sharp was back on his pumper for other calls later. Now, nearly 12 hours later, tenants at 88 Bloor Street East are still milling around the darkened building. A few reading their insurance policies. Others, like Carl Kellman, who broke down a door to get on the roof for safety, wondering where he's going to put his head tonight.
I'm going to go over to a friend's house to sleep tonight. Just go up and see what my apartment's like. Get together and stay at a friend's house.
The lower floors of this complex, the actual Hotel Plaza 2, is about 75% operational once the power's back to normal, so the 50 or 60 guests there will be okay. As for the apartment dwellers, they don't know if and when they're going to get back in tonight. If they do, most of them just want to look and want to leave, stay with friends. Mark Daly at the Hotel Plaza 2 on Bloor Street East, CityPulse Tonight.
It was apparent at the fire scene that many of the tenants of the apartment complex simply didn't know what to do when the fire broke out. As Lorne Honickman reports, the confusion was reminiscent of another Toronto disaster.
No one knew what was happening, so I figured if I got in contact with somebody down here, they'd do something. So we stayed on the phone all along, and he told us what we should do.
Like many people in the apartment complex, Valerie was confused as to the evacuation procedures in case of fire. As people made it to safety, they talked about the lack of communication.
It sucked. Stuck. It was bad. I mean,
we had to do it on our own.
Yeah. I think they need a better amplifying system so that people can hear what to do. They came over the PA system, but nobody. I couldn't hear unless I got out in the hall and sat under there for 3 or 4 minutes waiting just to listen to the one thing they were saying, which would have caused me to pass out in the smoke anyway.
Sound familiar? It should. January 17th, 1981, the Inn on the Park Hotel. 6 people die in a fire. On top of the recommendations in the inquest that followed a year later, an efficient communication system installed so hotel guests will know exactly what to do in case of fire.
I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't answer questions for the apartment complex. As I say, they're totally separate buildings, separate management from the hotel, and the fire was not in the hotel. I can answer you questions about the safety in the hotel and our guests.
In all the confusion here today, only one person died. We were very lucky. We had to learn the hard way about fire safety in hotels, and it appears today we received the same lesson about high-rise apartment buildings. Lauren Honickman's City Pulse Tonight.
If you were one of the people rescued from the hotel this afternoon, it is important that you register with the Red Cross at 92 Bloor Street East in the Merrill Lynch offices. If you want information about a friend or relative who's staying at the Plaza 2, you can call the Red Cross tomorrow at 923-6692. Tonight, cleanup operations are underway at the Plaza 2 Hotel. Many tourists who are staying there are waiting in the lobby until things are normal and they can go back to their rooms. The two biggest problems tonight, restoring power back to the building and getting rid of the water flooding stairwells and auxiliary rooms. A serious fire like this is frequently the tragic setting for exceptional acts of bravery, and there were very courageous men out there today. Those details from Mark Daly.
The fallen firefighters are indeed heroes. One suffered a cut right through the artery in his arm. Another was felled by smoke and exhaustion. Several firemen ran out of air and were on their own upstairs. Others handed their masks to civilians and choked and grappled 18 floors to safety. Although there was some initial confusion and a bit of panic, firemen took control quickly and may have saved many more lives. Among the people rescued upstairs, this woman who thinks it went well.
I think the firemen were wonderful. They really calmed us down. We were pretty panicky before that. When they came, we were calm.
One police officer carried an injured fireman, a big guy at that, with all of his heavy equipment 10 floors to the ground. I wish we knew how many of the hundreds of people were heroes. It's all in a day's work for them. Ambulance crewman Al Craig, a former newsman and former firefighter, worked tirelessly trying to save the dead man, but it was just too late. I can't tell you, smoke inhalation doesn't sound serious sometimes up against death or physical injury, but it can kill quickly, and it hurts. Mark Daly at the Plaza 2, City Pulse Tonight.
Chum's Dick Smythe was at the fire today. Here he is with tonight's comment.
First of all, I haven't been out covering a story for a heck of a long time. Too long a time. I used to do it all the time. That's the problem with we pundits. We get locked into our offices and we look at the world through our windows. Maybe that's the reason there are so many half-baked editorials on the air and in the newspapers. I don't exempt myself. It's a failing of the news business that everybody in it is not required to go out and cover at least one story a week. The last time I was at Yonge and Bloor, I felt proud, as I do any place in this city, because it's such an exciting, dynamic place to be. Today, I was at Yonge and Bloor under very different circumstances, but I also felt proud again. The cops, the Metro ambulance guys, certainly the firefighters, all did one hell of a job. Individually, they were great. Collectively, they were well organized. The whole emergency apparatus operated like a well-oiled machine, which in effect it is. You know, Toronto's a city of pros. It attracts the very best in every line of work. And that's obviously true of our public safety people as well.
Tonight, the Metro Homicide Squad is investigating the city's 29th murder of the year. Those details from Lauren Honickman.
The 60-year-old man, whose name as yet has not been released, was found at the bottom of the stairs early this morning here at 45 Granby Street. He had suffered fatal head injuries. Police say the lady who owns the home allows men who have no other place to live to reside here. There were 8 men living here at the time of the murder. The neighbors I spoke to tell me that 45 Granby is the haven for Toronto's down and outers. It's been the scene of a lot of parties and drunken fights. This lady, who didn't want to tell me her name, lives across the street from 45 Granby. She says the home has always been the scene of trouble.
I've seen fighting. This is all that's going on there. One comes out, up the stairs, the other one knocks him down. He's lying there unconscious. Somebody off the street helps them. And it's sad to see this because nobody's helping them.
It was first believed that the man died from a fall down the stairs, but an autopsy late this afternoon here at the coroner's building revealed he died from a beating. The 7 other men who were in the house are now at 52 Division tonight being questioned by homicide officers. No arrests as of yet. Lauren Honickman's City Pulse Tonight.
Now with an early look at what is happening on the streets tonight, here is our chief assignment editor, Glenn Cole. Glenn?
Deanie, 13 divisional officers chasing a man with a gun in the vicinity of 22 Vaughan Road. The food mart was just held up. There were no injuries, and there have been no arrests as yet. 41 Division certainly has a stake in the investigation of a theft from the A&P store on Kennedy this evening. 2 turkeys tried to make off with some T-bone steaks. One man was caught, and another man is going to be caught very shortly. He definitely is going to be facing a raw deal. But is the weather going to give us a raw deal in the next couple of days? So let's go to the heart of the matter by going live down to Queen Street. And Mr. Silver Tongue himself, Ryan Hill.
Thanks, Glenn. Bill Cameron may be away, but you're certainly taking his place with the silver lines. It is raining right now in Toronto, and we're going to experience the drops overnight tonight. But I have definitely good news as far as what's coming our way. Cooler temperatures, very much cooler temperatures, and a very positive weekend weather forecast as well. All of that later. Right now, I'm getting out of the rain, and Deanie, back to you.
Thank you, Brian. With a quarter of the eligible voters in the riding signed up as members of the party, Broadview Greenwood Tories are facing a mammoth task. Tonight, the riding's Credentials Committee met to begin the process of checking that all memberships are valid. And our political specialist, Colin Vaughan, tagged along.
Broadview Greenwood Tories are riding high at the peak of their popularity, even though their current membership has shrunk a little from the announced 13,000 plus, closer to 11,000 after the big blue computer spat out duplications and obvious errors in their membership lists. As for those NDPers and others in the riding who were signed up as members without being asked by overzealous canvassers, well, the Tories have been big about it, taking the benevolent view.
Basically, we are guided here by the old saying of Leslie Frost, who was for years a very successful premier of this province. Mr. Frost said, "We always keep a light in the window for wayward souls." And we're aware of the discontent that a lot of people have with the federal government right now, and we're quite convinced that a lot of people that may have voted New Democrat before, may have been liberals in the past, are more than happy to become bona fide members of the Broadview Greenwood Association. So,
which view discounts the chance that those dissidents might just turn up at the nomination meeting, vote as a bloc, and mess up the result. So far tonight, no names have been challenged by the candidates' representatives present. They're still working on the rules for future meetings. And the mood of tonight's meeting? Well, generally genial.
Okay, and everybody's happy, are you? Everybody happy? 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 Happy?
Conservatives are winners.
Even if they're unhappy.
Colin Vaughan, Progressive Conservative Headquarters, CityPulse Tonight.
Yes, Virginia, there is going to be a Santa Claus parade this year, after all.
Things, but first of all, I want to show you a letter that Chairman Godfrey got from a little girl who lives here in metropolitan Toronto. It says, "Dear Santa, don't stop the parade. Please, love Amber." And here's a picture of me crying. Well, we reached out and found Amber. Okay? And we found her last night. And we brought Amber here. And here's the letter that she wrote. I'm glad the mail got it delivered on time.
It was from last year.
And we want to tell you, Amber, that you weren't the only one that was thinking about crying. There are a lot of us that were thinking about crying. So you don't have to cry anymore, Amber, because we're proud to say that this parade is going to go on as it has in the last 77 years. And this parade is going to go on, and Santa Claus is going to be there. And now you have the...
Amber then got to meet Santa Claus himself. Cohan says all 20 floats in the parade now have corporate sponsors. Apparently, he even had to turn down a few. All that's left now is to set a date for the parade. Coming up next on City Pulse tonight, a small sign of economic recovery and Mike Chirette's cross-country Buy Canada campaign. Tonight, the Bank of Canada rate is at its lowest level in almost 2 years. It dropped nearly a full percentage point to 14.26%. And in response to that, major chartered banks slashed their interest rates by almost a full percentage point as well. And it was another encouraging day for the Canadian dollar. It jumped almost half a cent to close the day at 80.83 cents U.S. And more good news, the Toronto Stock Exchange, the 300 index climbed 15.5 points. It ended up at 1488. Our political specialist, Colin Vaughan, witnessed a historic event at Queen's Park. The provincial government finally discovered that Saudi Arabia really does exist.
Saudi Arabia's Minister of Commerce discovered Ontario today. But the message was that Ontario should have discovered Saudi Arabia years ago. Dr. Solomon Al-Saleem revealed that when it comes to imports into his country, Canada is very, very low on the totem pole, ranking 8th and last amongst major suppliers of goods.
Your exports represent only 1.5% of our imports, which reached something like $38 billion a year. But you have come a long way.
Ontario Industry and Trade Minister Gordon Walker blamed other exporters getting there first for Canada's and Ontario's dismal performance in Saudi Arabia.
Why weren't we there first?
I think the answer is we will be now there taking advantage of our opportunities to sell in Saudi Arabia, and of course they'll be anxious to take advantage of what we have to offer as well.
Another example of Ontario's slowness to recognize it.
I think, if anything, it's an indication that Ontario is the first in Canada to seek out the market.
The good news? Saudi Arabia and Ontario expect to be world leaders in petrochemicals and are coordinating their efforts. And Walker will head an Ontario trade mission to the country in November to stir up some business.
All depends on your competitiveness, your prices, your quality of products, and your delivery. So whatever you have, our market is open, and you can compete with the others in Saudi Arabia.
Ontario businessmen, Saudi Arabia, yours to discover. Colin Vaughan, Queen's Park, CityPulse Tonight.
Mike Charette wants more of us to buy Canadian. The self-proclaimed professional nationalist has been traveling the country to make sure that we do just that. Peter Silverman caught up with him today.
Huckster, man with a vision, or a good salesperson with wider ambitions. None seem to adequately describe Mike Charette, who for 12 years has been trying to convince the federal government to launch a huge advertising campaign to promote Canadian-owned businesses. His approach? To sign up Canadian-owned businesses for his Canadian Alternatives campaign. So far, he's signed up 5,000. He's aiming for 300,000. Which would make his canned ad a very powerful lobby indeed. The cost, depending on the size of the company, is a one-time contribution of between $10 to $700. And today, he was signing up more.
We want to stress quality, price, and service. And I don't think that we have to shy away from those three words.
His pitch is convincing. He claims that the government uses tax dollars to help huge multinational companies while ignoring the Canadian-owned little guy. He says we have a lot to be proud of and should advertise that fact. And he points out his logo honestly denotes a Canadian-owned business. However, it doesn't mean it sells only Canadian goods. Still, he has tapped a well of Canadian nationalism and pride.
Being a Canadian, anytime I can make a small contribution at all to help the Canadian economy, I'd be more than happy to do so. So that's why I joined. I think it's a good idea.
For some customers, a logo does have a significance.
I think it means buy Canadian. Yeah, Canadian products versus anything that comes in from another country.
But not for everyone. What do you think it means?
I don't really know.
And that worries Charette. He wants Ottawa to underwrite a $30 million ad campaign promoting Canadian-owned businesses. But what does he want?
Well, I want to identify the Canadian content in the economy and direct a campaign to show people when their dollar's staying in the country, employing Canadians, and give them a chance to see their dollar again.
But we Canadians have found ways of getting around those type of disturbing aspects of these Buy Canadian or Canadian-owned logos. For example, the Petro-Canada logo, which tells us it's ours. Where was it designed? In the United States, of course. Now, how's that for a nice, typical Canadian compromise? I'm Peter Silverman for CityPulse Tonight.
And in the United States today, the House of Representatives approved President Reagan's controversial $98 billion tax increase. The victory was seen as crucial to the president's reputation in an election year.
On behalf of the American people, I want to thank the members of both parties in the House of Representatives for who made today's victory possible. This was a hard choice for many of them, especially in an election year. But when it came to the test, a bipartisan majority bit the bullet and voted for the revenue increases and spending cuts we so urgently need to get deficits and interest rates down and Americans back to work. This vote does not mark the end of the crusade to get our country's economy moving again, but it is an important milestone.
Coming up after this, the Israeli cabinet gives final approval for the evacuation of the PLO. And in Cyprus, French foreign legionnaires prepare to take up their duties in the West Beirut withdrawal. The long and difficult road to the evacuation of the PLO from West Beirut appears to be in its final hours. Today, the Israeli cabinet gave its final approval to U.S. envoy Philip Habib. NBC's Martin Fletcher reports.
It's possible the PLO will start leaving Beirut this weekend, but the evacuation process lasts 14 days, and Israeli officials are quick to point out that many things could still go wrong, such as a radical Palestinian group trying to sabotage the whole operation. And just before the Israeli cabinet gathered this morning to discuss Ambassador Philip Habib's plan, they were told that a group of Palestinians had kidnapped an Israeli soldier overnight in Beirut. That aroused Israeli fears, and the meeting ended with a yes but. Yes to the plan, but the evacuation could begin only after the PLO handed back the kidnapped man, as well as a captured pilot and the bodies of 9 Israeli soldiers. Defense Minister Ariel Sharon rejected PLO claims their withdrawal was a victory for the Palestinians.
It's not a withdrawal, it's an expulsion.
He said it was a great success for Israel.
And I believe that is one of the major achievements that Israel ever achieved.
Sharon also said the Israeli army would not leave Lebanon until the Syrians left. And talking to tourists tonight, the former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin summed up what many are thinking.
This will be the end of quite a sad story, but I'm not sure it's the end of the problems in Lebanon.
The PLO's departure from Beirut will be the end of Phase 1 of Habib's talks. Phase 2 will concern the departure of Israeli and Syrian troops from Lebanon, but that could be even more difficult than getting the PLO out. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Jerusalem.
Tomorrow, the Lebanese government will formally ask the United States, France, and Italy to send troops to serve in a multinational peacekeeping force. Now, of course, it is just a formality. The formation of the force was a key factor in the Beirut Agreement. With more on that, here's NBC's Phil Bremen.
All 3 nations sending peacekeeping forces to Beirut. All 3 were in evidence today at the international airport in Cyprus. French troops began arriving, even as Italian officers in civilian clothes boarded U.S. Navy helicopters. An American diplomat refused to explain. Cypriot sources said the small Italian party was going straight to Beirut to plan the deployment of the main Italian force. And off the Lebanese coast, American Marines now are believed aboard ship, just waiting for the order to go ashore. But it will be these French paratroopers and foreign legionnaires who take their positions first, standing between the Israelis encircling Beirut and the Palestinian fighters who will at last be leaving. And in a sense, the French contingent is itself a multinational force. One officer said these foreign legionnaires are from 31 countries. This French soldier is an Englishman. Only light weapons were seen. The French reportedly are under orders to get out of the way if shooting breaks out. But there was no anxiety on the toughened young faces as they boarded the French warships in Larnaca Harbor for the 11-hour voyage. French correspondents traveling with them described the troops' morale as high and their determination strong. All indications here are that the PLO withdrawal is on schedule. Sources here say these troops will set sail for Lebanon tomorrow. Phil Bremen, NBC News, Larnaca, Cyprus.
Coming up after this, the Queen Elizabeth II on her first civilian sail since doing war duty in the South Atlantic. Today, the Queen Elizabeth II glided majestically into New York City. Once again, a luxury liner after seeing combat in the Falkland Islands. That story from NBC's Norma Quarles.
The Queen Elizabeth II sailed into New York Harbor today, completing its first cruise since doing war duty in the Falkland Islands. When the British Navy took over the QE2 on May 3rd, all of her luxury appointments were stripped. Pools on the bow and stern were converted to helicopter pads. Furniture was removed to make room for the 3,500 troops transported to the South Atlantic. In its 40 days in the South Atlantic, the QE2 was never detected by Argentina's Air Force, nor did it suffer any war damage. But it was a harrowing experience, according to Captain Peter Jackson.
This ship was in the greatest possible danger when she was in the hostile area. It was a most harrowing and worrying experience. The most vivid experience I had was navigating this ship in dense fog in the South Atlantic among hundreds of icebergs.
Many people came to welcome what they considered a returning war hero. Norma Quarles, NBC News, New York.
And in Boston, firefighters have been battling an epidemic of arson since July. Since that time, over 100 suspicious fires have been deliberately set, with only one arrest so far. The story tonight from NBC's Nancy Fernandez.
This ordeal began on June 11th. Firefighters were called to 14 suspicious fires that night, but it was just the beginning. Since then, the Boston Fire Department has battled 132 multiple alarm fires, all suspected cases of arson. Most have occurred on Fridays during the early morning hours. Most have been in vacant buildings in poor neighborhoods. Officials say they have no idea who is setting the fires or why.
Whether it's arson for profit, whether there's something organized, we're not sure yet.
Roger, 401 reported that we had 3 individuals under surveillance at that residence.
Special agents of the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms have joined local investigators trying to track down arsonists. At least one suspect is under 24-hour surveillance. No lives have been lost in these fires, but people are concerned for their safety. The vacant building next to Julia Smoot's house burned Tuesday night.
I'm afraid to go to sleep at night, afraid that the house will, when the house catches a fire next door, that it might set my house on fire.
Boston State Representative Royal Bowling says the arson epidemic is playing havoc with people's lives.
Homeowners are worried. Should I move out? Should I stay? And this only increases the urban flight and urban decay.
One Boston man has been arrested for arson, but officials believe more than one person is responsible for the fires. Nancy Fernandez, NBC News, Boston.
CityPulse Tonight will continue in just a moment. Weatherman Bride Hill is going to cooperate for a change. It looks like we are in for some good weather this weekend, Bride?
Yes, and not only that, but we get the watering of our lawns and the plants overnight while we're sleeping. And tomorrow we should see another nice day ahead of us. It was very breezy in town today. We had circulation around the high, clockwise fashion, as it always is, that brought very strong winds over top of Toronto, although it was a warming southerly flow. So it was windy and it was kind of warm in town today. But we've got cool air on the way. Very cool air, in fact. It's another whole wave of cool air going to hit us by Saturday. On the satellite map tonight, you can see that there was cloud all over top of Ontario today. You can see it stretching up in Hudson Bay. But as we look on the other side of that, that's our weekend weather. That's now stretching over the prairies, and you can see there's beautiful clear skies throughout that entire area. And you can't see it because it's very cloudy out tonight, but there's a brand new moon in the sky, and you can see it right here on City Pulse. Interestingly enough, if we go back to the forecast map, Mount St. Helens did erupt today on this, and there was a 3.3 Richter earthquake in San Francisco yesterday. I wouldn't want to link those two with the new moon, but nevertheless, they did occur, and that is a fact. They had a tornado sighted in North Dakota. They had golf ball-sized hail, all associated with a little bit of rain that we're experiencing, so we're getting off very well. Sunny for Friday and for Saturday and for Sunday because of all that clearing throughout the prairies and the high pressure that's off of the West Coast. So in general, as we look ahead to the weekend, It looks very, very good. Now, tomorrow in Toronto, we'll still have the lingering effects of this rain that we're going to experience overnight. So we'll have a cloudy start to the day, but things should be beautiful and sunny by the time that you're getting out of work and running out to start your weekend. Very breezy day tomorrow, 25 for the high and 15 for the low. Windy once again. Now, for Saturday, nice, beautiful mix of cloud and sun. Cool, though, as that cold air comes down over top of us from way up in the Arctic, basically. 19 for the high. It's quite similar to the low on Friday. 19 for the high, 11 for the low as the temperature drops. Sunday, lots of sun. Possibly the best day of the weekend. 26 for the high and 10 for the low. Plan to do something outdoors this weekend. Looks good. Right now, this is the area that the rain is covering, sweeping through Toronto and heading out over Lake Ontario. There's more that's heading our way, and we'll be experiencing that throughout the night tonight. As I say, it is raining downtown right now. These are the toastiest temperatures that we reached around town today. 25 in Toronto, but Windsor was definitely the hot spot at 29. And outside right now on Queen Street, you can observe that it is, yes, indeed, raining. It's raining on the windshields, it's raining on the roads, it's raining everywhere. Not a heavy rain, it's raining on the football game as well. But it's not the sort of thing that stops the game. They just slide around in the AstroTurf, right? Present temperature 24 Celsius, 75 Fahrenheit. The winds from the west-southwest. They're going to veer to the north tomorrow at 30. And the barometric pressure 101.2 kilopascals, as you might suspect. It's falling with this rain over top of us. Marine forecast tomorrow, northwesterly winds. Ooh, do you see the flash of lightning there? Blowing from the northwest, and that's a good blow, too. 15 to 20 knots out in the water. But in general, tomorrow, fair conditions. And that's what we'd like to see, after all. Okay, Muskoka had not a bad day at all today at 23 degrees. Kingston, 21. Overnight tonight, yes, indeed, there'll be the lightning in the sky and the raindrops on your head. Take an umbrella if you're heading outdoors for some reason. 15, our overnight low. Good sleeping weather. I like to sleep in the rain. I don't know about you. 8 a.m., I'm not indoors, you know. I knew you were going to get to that, Deanie. 8 o'clock in the morning, the sun will be back out at about 21. I don't sleep outside in the rain. I have to be indoors.
Except, of course, when you can't find your way into the house and you're forced to.
That never happens to me.
Never.
No.
Brian, is it raining very heavily out there? Just a little drizzle?
Just a little drizzle, but it's quite widespread. There is actually a severe thunderstorm warning for northern parts of Metro, York, and Peel regions out tonight. But for metropolitan Toronto, per se, I don't think it's going to be too severe. Anyway, stay indoors and don't get wet. No problems.
Okay, thanks, Brian. On the entertainment scene tonight, Gordon Lightfoot's newest pastime, and then the National Ballet at the Forum.
You might be wondering what an entertainment reporter is doing at a press conference for a sporting event. The way I see it, racing weekends at Mosport are as entertaining as they are sporting. And my appearance here wasn't nearly as much a surprise as that of legendary Canadian entertainer Gordon Lightfoot. In fact, part of the reason Gordon has become a legend is that no one sees him too much, so it had to be something very important to bring him back into the public eye. And it was. Gordon announced that he was sponsoring the first entry in the September 12th Can-Am race at Mosport. The car is a Frisbee to be driven by last season's Rookie of the Year, John Graham. Gordon admitted to not knowing a lot about the Can-Am, but did say he had some past experience in racing.
I used to be an opening act at Mosport. I have had some experience with the go-karts. I into the C class at one point, but nevertheless I gave it up for the good of my health and my fingernails because I had to play the guitar, and every time I tried to fix the goddamn thing, I'd break my fingernails off.
To my knowledge, Lightfoot is the first Canadian entertainer to ever sponsor a racing car. Why did he get involved?
I made a kind of a very coy remark earlier. I said, I guess I could be the richest guy in the graveyard. But that's, like you do something. You have to do something.
Gordon made a joke about being present for the rehearsals or time trials for the race, but unfortunately will have to watch the event on television, as his schedule will have him away on tour the day of the race. At the Ontario Place Forum through until Sunday, the National Ballet of Canada presents their production of Bournonville's La Sylphide, the first time that they brought the program back since Mikhail Baryshnikov made his appearance in 1974. We caught up with the ballet during an afternoon rehearsal, where principal dancers Frank Augustine and Karen Kane were going through their paces with choreographer Eric Bruhl in preparation for last night's show. After a rather disappointing performance with the Toronto Symphony a couple of weeks ago, blamed mostly on the weather, Frank and Karen were in top form, lending reinforcement to many people's opinion that they are the best dancing combination in Canada.
I think it's something which is chemical. It's we get along extremely well. Our personalities seem to be, if not opposite, very similar at times. And we're able to understand each other. And that plays an important role in working and developing a partnership and applying the craft on top of the chemistry which is already naturally there.
Karen herself was in great spirits yesterday, signing a few autographs, picking up a bite to eat, and generally just taking in the atmosphere of Ontario Place. Despite the physical structure of the forum that forces a cutback of the illusory production of ballet, Karen very much enjoys dancing there.
The best thing about the forum is the audience. You know, I think that's the only reason we really love it. They're just so terrific, so warm. The conditions are very difficult. It's very difficult to concentrate. It's very hard to kind of get in the mood and get your concentration, really.
Do you think that being at the forum with the access the crowd has, that you're turning a lot of other people on to ballet that might not have come out to see it?
Well, we hope so. I think that's one of the main reasons that we do it. Many people see ballet for the first time that are either afraid to go and see it at the O'Keeffe or can't afford to go and see it at the O'Keeffe. You know, or think that it's not something that they'd like, and sometimes they just see it by chance, and they realize that they can appreciate it too.
Last Feed will be presented at the Forum through until Sunday at 8:30 in the evening, with matinees Saturday and Sunday at 3. Anyone who's a fan of the Steven Spielberg movie E.T., the Extraterrestrial, and who's not, will be happy to hear that it's gone down in the annals of cinematic history as the fastest-grossing box office hit. In the 9 weeks since its release, E.T. has passed the $200 million mark, reaching that level 4 times faster than its predecessor, Star Wars. Star Wars, which has grossed some $400 million in several releases, took 8 months to hit the $200 million mark. Now here's Rick Ringer with the Rock Report.
Number 1 for the 4th week in a row in Toronto. It's Robert Plant's Pictures at 11 LP from Chum FM. Paul McCartney is denying reports that he paid $3 million to a German teenager claiming to be his illegitimate daughter. McCartney's press agent says it's a lie. Paul has paid nothing. The claim is outrageous, unquote. But Bettina Hubers and her mother are sticking to their story. Mrs. Hubers saying the past 19 years has been like a boxing match between me and Paul, and claiming that McCartney also paid her $25,000 back in the 60s to keep quiet. An official statement from the Hubers lawyer is expected soon. Crosby, Stills and Nash member David Crosby, who's been arrested twice recently on possession of drugs and a gun, candidly defends his drug use. I've been stoned for every bit of music I've ever played, every record, every performance, Crosby admits, and defiantly adds, if they can match my music, let them criticize it. Otherwise, anybody who can't has no right to tell me about getting high. There's been a change in the selection process for Juno Award nominees. Next year, the most promising male, female, and group categories will be selected by a panel of media critics, and the criteria won't be sales, giving the truly promising artists a chance for recognition as opposed to the established acts who have been nominated year after year. Juno Award winner Neil Young has been warming up for a year-long world tour with some club dates in Northern California. Playing with Neil again is old Crazy Horse sidekick Nils Lofgren. Also, Neil's long-delayed film, The Human Highway, is finally close to release. And coming off their strong set at the Police Picnic, the Spoons are now finishing up work on their next album in London with producer John Punter. Then they'll return to their hottest territory, the Ontario University Circuit, in September. At Chum FM, I'm Rick Ringer for CityPulse Tonight.
What do you think we should do it? CityPulse from the Forum? Yeah. Do you think you'd feel comfortable doing the sports in the Forum?
I'm comfortable right now. I got a dilemma, right?
What's the matter?
Well, Toronto played Ottawa tonight, right? And
Yeah.
everyone cheers for the Argos, but you know who owns Ottawa?
Ah.
Yes, the man.
The great
who
white
owns,
leader.
The guy who owns
Go Ottawa, go Ottawa.
Anyways, this early in the season, it was not so much a case of a game the Argos had to win, but rather a game they should win, and they spent very little time asserting themselves. Here's Holloway in the first quarter, putting it up for Leo Gray, and Argos have 27 yards down to the 13. A couple plays later, there it goes to Cedric Minder, touchdown, 7-0 for the Argos. But the Ottawa Rough Riders, owned by the fine man who also owns this company, start a drive from their own 10. Chris Isaac to Jeff Avery, nice catch there. Then Skip Walker does a little dancing into the end zone, and it's 7-7. But the Argos come right back on their next possession. Watch this incredible catch by Martin Cox. Back good for 37 yards. And 2 plays later, it is Cox again on the receiving end from Conrad Holloway as the Argos take a 14-7 lead. Ottawa has 3 chances with the ball, can't do anything, so Argos get the ball again. And watch this, Holloway scrambling, finds Paul Pearson wide open. 58 yards on this play, down to the Ottawa 6 on the very next play. A great effort by the fullback Bob Bronk. Little outlet pass, and he barely makes it in for the touchdown. Argos open up a 35-10 lead, then hung on, and they have won this game by a score of 35-25. So they're 4 wins, 2 losses, and a tie. And in baseball tonight, the Blue Jays are relaxing with a very well-deserved second consecutive day off. And that rest follows 17 games in 15 days, during which the Jays won 9 and lost 8. In Atlanta tonight, though, the Expos lost to Atlanta 5-4, which is unfortunate because the St. Louis Cardinals are also losing. Now, when we talk about the Argos and the Blue Jays and the Expos, we're talking about guys in their 20s and 30s. But when we talk about tonight's athletic profile, we're talking about a guy who was born in 1898. Robinson, I thought I'd finally met someone I could beat at golf. After all, Walter is 84 years old, which is more than 5 decades down the line from me. But a match between Walter and myself was a lot like the old story of the tortoise and the hare. Walter was amazingly consistent, hitting 150-yard drives over and over again down the center of the fairway, while yours truly, hoping to send the little white ball into orbit, inevitably found myself well short of Walter's shots. With a 34 handicap, Walter still flirts with the magic 100 mark, and he still loves the game of golf.
I've never been a top player. I've always had some bad shots, so I don't mind missing them now. I hate to do it, but at the same time, you can't expect to play par golf when you get as far along in years as I am.
Walter Robinson will never be accused of slowing things down on the golf course. Like the youngster Mo Norman, Walter simply steps up to the ball and hits it.
I've only got so many shots left, and I've got to get them all in before I'm called up above.
Actually, Walter Robinson could easily have been City Television's first ever Athlete of the Week, if City Television was 62 years old, because in 1920 and 1921, he played for the Ontario champion lacrosse team. And as mobile and as athletic as he is in his 9th decade, he even appreciated the Converse running shoes given to him by Schlesinger.
I wanted a pair of shoes like that for a long time, but just kept putting off buying them. But I do appreciate that, and I'm sure I'll enjoy wearing them.
Walter and I played at the Weston Golf Course yesterday, and I won't tell you what I shot. I'll only tell you that Walter beat me by 12 strokes. But hey, the guy's obviously got the edge in experience, and tonight experience also paid off at Greenwood. Look at this. Patch Dodger has the lead for Ronnie Waples. I mean, he's got the lead by about a quarter of a mile, winning it easily, paying $6.40. Coming in second is number 6, Lucifer Blue Chip on the outside, just edging out number 1, Shy O'Brien. Patch Dodger for Ronnie Waples in the first race. Now, in the second race, the horse with the lead as they come in the stretch, named after Beanie, number 3, Boogie Woogie Mama. The driver's real bourgeois, but Boogie Woogie Mama doesn't dance for the whole mile, because up on the extreme outside comes number 1, How Nice. And how nice it would have been to have this horse, because it paid $20.50 for Tom Strauss, beating number 8, Armbro Beckon, and Ted Jacobs. The double tonight, 4 and 1, $60.50. The exactor 1 and 8, $80.30. The Argos still in first place with that win over Ottawa tonight.
I thought you were going to say How Nice was named after a lady you work with on occasion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Anything to say.
Coming up after this, the finest windsurfers in the West compete for honors in San Diego, California. It takes water, a board, and the skill to maneuver the wind, and it's called windsurfing. This week down in San Diego, California, 250 windsurfers are competing in a regatta. We have that story from NBC's Meredith Lewis.
Windsurfing, a California invention, has now graduated from a fad to a sport complete with rules and regulations. It's even being considered as a yachting event for the 1984 Olympics. This is one event in the windsurfing regatta, a triangular run around 3 water buoys, 6 laps around on a 4.5-mile course. Windsurfing is one sport that looks easy to master, but even some masters have trouble getting started. And the best sailors wipe out sometimes. The regatta is open to women competing against one another and against men in the lightweight division. The windsurfer rig is nothing more than a surfboard with a movable sail, which can turn in any direction to catch a breeze. Windsurfers say they feel at one with the elements, the wind and the water. It's no wonder that the popularity of the smallest sailboat in the water has grown to 250,000 in the last 13 years. Meredith Lewis, NBC News, San Diego.
Now we'll check in with Mr. Cole up on the 5th floor for a final look at what's happening on the streets of Toronto. Glenn?
Well, first of all, Deanie, just a tiny little correction here. We had up on the screen earlier that we had been talking to Assistant Deputy Chief Walter Shanahan. Not quite true. He, of course, has been promoted to Deputy Chief. Sorry about that, Walter. We'll make sure that it doesn't happen again. Traffic is very good out there, even in the area of the CNE and the Argo game, so don't worry about that part of it. However, it is raining outside. The streets are greasy. Make sure that you drive safely and are buckled up. Have a good evening. That's Street Beat for tonight. Deanie?
Thank you, Glenn. Now out to the streets of Toronto in the rainy weather. Here's Brian.
Thanks, Deanie. And listen, well, there is a severe thunderstorm warning for the counties of southern Simcoe, northern Peel, York, and Durham right now. But the rain basically will rain on us overnight. And by tomorrow, it should be a rather pleasant day, although it will be cooler in Toronto. We need the drink, don't you think? It's kind of nice out here, actually. Deanie, back to you.
Thank you, Brian. Tomorrow, we have more on today's tragedy at the Plaza 2 Hotel. We will be following the investigation to find out how the blaze started. That's tomorrow on City Pulse.
Well, the Argos win again, 35-25 over the Ottawa Rough Riders.
Our condolences go out tonight to the family of Basil Campbell. He's the man who died in today's Plaza 2 apartment fire. And now, in admiration for the men and women who work in Toronto's emergency services, we close our show with these images of their dedication and their bravery. Good night.